Okay, this is the third video for our anatomy notes. Here's a diagram of some of the parts. Some of the parts that are on here, I just printed this from the internet, are not something we study. Also, I'm not sure this is an American one because some of the things are called something else. But we have the esophagus. Notice they call it the whatever they call it. You have the stomach right here. As I said, the pancreas, the notes say the pancreas is below the stomach. Here's the liver. And I told you that the gallbladder is a little duct that's between the liver and the stomach. So here's the liver and the stomach right between it. Like I said, is this little green gallbladder. The spleen, which actually kind of sticks out like right here. It's just not on this diagram. Technically, it's part of the circulatory system. So this is a digestive diagram, so it's kind of hard to find it sometimes on a diagram, but it sticks out right there. And actually, that seems a little high for where it is. But anyway, I mean, if you look at really, his stomach is up in his chest. So this whole diagram, I think, is a little high. But where the stuff is in relation to other stuff is fine. Small intestine, the large intestine, and that little finger-like thing is the appendix. And then down here is the end where the rectum is. So hopefully that helps you on that. We're going to move on. We are at the kidney. The kidney is in the renal system. Kidney bean shaped, that's where the kidney bean shaped gets its name. It's red because it basically filters your blood. Anyway, you have two, one on either side of your back. So, you know, if you had pain in your kidney, it would probably be more in your back. But the kidneys filter out impurities from the blood. When people have to have dialysis, that's because their kidneys aren't working, and they basically, their blood goes into a machine to be filtered and then put back in their body. The next one is the ureter, which is part of the urinary system. Well, it's part of all the kidney is too. But the ureter, it says each kidney has a tube from it to the bladder. It's called a ureter. Carries fluid, urine from the kidneys to the bladder. The next one is a urinary bladder. And by the way, these are both renal. Roundish, stretchy organ in the center of the groin area. Stores urine until you get to a bathroom. And then, should I scoot up a little? I'm going to. Need to get something to hold this. Anyway, the urethra is renal. A tube from the bladder to the outside carries urine out of the body. So I have a diagram here of you have your kidneys, one on either side. You have your ureters that go out of the kidney to the bladder, and then your urethra is where you pee out of. Now, obviously, that's going to be rerouted depending on your gender, but it's still called the same thing. All right, I got two here I want to present together, artery and vein. They're both circulatory. An artery is a tube carrying blood in the body. They both are really. But the difference is an artery carries blood away from the heart, and a vein carries oxygen and empty blood back to the heart. Because your lungs put air in your blood, your heart pumps it around the body in arteries, and then it comes back to the lungs and heart through your veins. The spleen, which I already showed you what it is, like I said, it's circulatory. Round organ inside the left side, sticking out from behind your stomach. Stores blood. You can live without it. If it ruptures, you can bleed out. Sometimes people like have a traumatic accident, like a car crash or whatever, and because it's kind of like a balloon, and they rupture their spleen, and since it stores blood, it just keeps filling up. And if it's leaking, you bleed out into your body. So, okay, the heart is circulatory and muscular because the heart is a muscle. It says in the chest, see in the center of the chest, a bit to the right, inside the rib cage, it is a muscle that pumps blood so that it travels through the body. Okay. The trachea is respiratory. Respiratory system deals with breathing. The tube from the mouth to the nose into the bronchial tubes and lungs. If you get bronchitis, and I think it says this in the notes, if you get bronchitis, it's infection in these tubes. Carries air into the chest cavity, has a flap at the top to keep food and liquid from going down your lungs. And the swallowing motion closes the flap. So the flap is open for you to breathe. And as soon as your muscles swallow, that flap closes. If you ever have something go down the wrong way, it's probably because something in your mouth slipped too far down your throat before you swallowed, and some of it got into your airway. Okay, lung, respiratory, and I think this goes on to the next page, actually. It does. Okay, respiratory and circular is the lungs. Circulatory. You have two, one on each side of the chest cavity. They are like balloons. They need inflated and can collapse. Air goes into the trachea through the bronchial tubes. The little compartments inside the lung are called alveoli that put oxygen in, a tiny bit of oxygen into alveoli, which puts it into the bloodstream. The diaphragm. Make sure I'm still on the camera here. The diaphragm, respiratory and muscular. It's a muscle that goes horizontally across the bottom of the chest cavity. This muscle contracts or shortens to push air out of the lungs and expands or lengthens to drag air into the lungs. So if your diaphragm is paralyzed, you would not be able to breathe because you wouldn't have anything just to drag air in or push air out. So some people that have a paralyzing accident die just because they lose their ability to breathe. And that would be, you know, a pretty quick death, I would think. I mean, as quick as it takes you to suffocate. Respiratory, tubes that split off the trachea and go into the lungs. These tubes split off several times, getting smaller and smaller, so the amount of air in one alveoli is very small. Bronchitis is an infection here. I think I misspoke before, but that's okay. Where are we at? Okay, I still got a little bit of time. Hypothalamus is the endocrine system. The endocrine system is glands that secrete or leak out something into your body that you need. It says it's a gland in the center of the brain, gland that controls the body temperature, thirst, hunger, and homeostatic system. So when you don't have enough water, your hypothalamus gland tells you you're thirsty. When it's cold outside and you go outside, your hypothalamus gland, makes things happen in your body to warm you up. The spinal cord is a nervous system, a cord that starts in the brain and goes all the way down inside your vertebrae. There is a channel inside your spine, carries electrical signals from the brain to all of your body and back. The medulla oblongata, say that again, medulla oblongata is the nervous system. It's part of the brain stem, or the bottom part of the brain, controls involuntary things like heartbeat and breathing. So if you damaged your medulla oblongata, your brain would not tell you to breathe. You don't have to think about breathing. You just do it. Same way you don't have to think about getting your heart to beat. You just do it. Those things are controlled by your medulla oblongata. The cerebellum is your nervous system. Behind the brainstem at the base of the brain, coordinating voluntary movement. So voluntary means you want to move that direction. Medulla oblongata is more involuntary, meaning things that you don't voluntarily do on your own. Can you imagine having to sit there and think about breathing and your heart beating and all the things your body needs to do automatically? You have to think about them. That would be awful. Occipital lobe is nervous above the cerebellum, but behind the parietal, controls visual perception, like color and other visual uses. The parietal lobe is also nervous. It's at the top of the brain. We're going to make a hat, believe it or not, that has these brain parts, interpreting touch, pain, temperature, and limb position. Temporal lobe is nervous. It's on the side of the brain. Hearing, memory, and emotion are controlled here. The frontal lobe is nervous. The front of the brain behind the forehead. Problem solving, language, emotion, and judgment. Okay, that's it, but I did want to show you the diagram real quick. You have the trachea, the bronchial tubes, which is where bronchitis is, which is what I think I misspoke about. Here's your diaphragm, of course, your lungs. You can see how an infection here is not really in your lungs. Once the infection moves from your bronchial tubes into your lungs, it's pneumonia. And pneumonia is an infection in your lungs. Okay, bye.